Hey everybody, I'm Dallas Leduc, and I'm here with my partner Tyler.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tyler Janin.
And we figured here, I was kicking the idea around of starting a podcast, and Tyler and I have actually never met each other. We've only talked on the phone a few dozen times and watched each other's videos. So we both farm in Saskatchewan. I'm in southern Saskatchewan, a little more on the western side, and Tyler, you're over on the southeastern side where it actually rains.
Yeah, well, sometimes it rains a little too much, but we'll take it.
When it rains too much at your place, it rains just the right amount at my place. I'm at Glentworth, Saskatchewan.
And I'm at Mooseman, Saskatchewan.
Okay, so out in God's country out there.
That's what a lot of people tell us.
Yeah, that's a good area, good dirt. But over here, we didn't have much of a crop last few years. We've been on and off for some droughts. But a little introduction into myself. I'm 48 years old. I farm with my father and my wife and a few hired men and my daughter. She's waving to me. She's only 10, so she's not a big part of the farm yet, but she will be. We farm, not always supposed to say your acres, a little over 10,000 acres, here of winter wheat, durum, mustard, large green lentils, yellow peas, and, if canola wasn't worthless, sometimes canola. Uh, I'm a fourth generation farmer on a second generation farm, which means my great grandfather homesteaded and farmed. And when my dad started farming in the 80s, he started his own farm, not far away from my grandfather's farm, but started his own farm that now I'm involved in. And as my grandfather, after he passed away, uh, we inherited some of his land and then proceeded to buy the rest of it off my uncle. So I'm a fourth generation farmer on a second generation farm because my dad has built this farm from nothing to what it is since I think he bought his first land in the late 70s, 78, I think, and then started full time farming in 83. So he didn't pick a good time to start farming. So a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to where we're at now. So that's my big goal is to not screw this up, what my dad has made. Because they always say, was it the first generation starts a farm, the second one grows it, the third one grows it some more, and the fourth one screws it up or something like that.
So that's a little different from what I've heard. I've heard the first generation starts it, the second generation grows it, and the third generation loses it.
Oh,
So that's not looking too good for me. So where I farm, like I said, I'm in southeast Saskatchewan. I'm right near Mooseman. I'm a third generation farmer. I farm with my dad, my uncle. I have a cousin that's involved, and a younger brother. So we are a large grain with a cow calf operation. And my grandpa was the one that started it. And just a quick story, my grandpa was a barn painter. Uh-oh, what was that?
I don't know what that beep was.
It says it's
I'm
still
still
recording.
recording.
I'm still recording. I don't know what that was.
Maybe just said 5 minutes.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm at just at 420. So
As you know, folks, this is our first podcast. So there's going to be some growing pains. So bear with us. We're going to have some fun doing this. We're going to learn lots doing it because neither Tyler or I know anything about making a podcast. But I guess I should go clarify it a little bit more. Uh, Not really a claim to fame, but my claim to fame is I'm on TikTok, and as everyone knows Dallas on TikTok, and I got a few videos with a few million views, and I got a little over 40,000 farmers or followers, and hopefully some of them are farmers. So that's where my claim to fame is, if there is a claim to fame. My claim to fame is I'm a pretty decent farmer in a pretty poor area. It's, it's my claim to fame. So that's what I'm trying to come up with is a good farm and stay growing it here.
and my claim to fame is I'm just like you, Dallas. I'm on TikTok. I don't have anywhere near as many views as you, or maybe as many followers, but I'm just trying to show my adventure of farming. I'm kind of just at the beginning of my farming career. I'm only 30 years old. So I'm just trying to tell my story and stay efficient in my day to day tasks.
Exactly. And when I come up with this idea, I was asked to be on a podcast at New Year's, and some logistics didn't work out that I could join it, and it got me playing around thinking, you know, That sounds like fun. Maybe I'll make my own podcast or work with somebody like Tyler here. We're going to make a podcast together because you listen to the podcasts and most of the ones that are down in the states and they're good, they're enjoyable, they're good, but that is nowhere close to what we farm or how we farm. They're planters and they're corn and they're soybeans and it's a whole different operation. you know they might grow a few hundred acres of winter wheat, or sometimes they call that poverty grass, and for us that's a pretty major crop. you know so that's what we're thinking. Well, let's make a podcast with Saskatchewan farmers, talking about Saskatchewan farmers. And if this works out, we're going to have a few guests. We got quite a few people that want to come work with us and have a little fun playing around here. Because up here we'll talk about cereal crops, air drills, straight combines. I got a buddy that's a stripper header guy. You know, Tyler's a swath and pickup guy. I own a swather. I have no idea why. We never use it. I own a swather and a pickup header, and I haven't used it in about 4 years. I'm a straight cut, FD 240 MacDon guy. So we're going to delve a little bit into how each of our operations are similar, but at the same time very different. Like every operation has the same goal, is to make money at the end of the year, but everybody's operation gets there on a whole different path.
So, how was your farming year this year, Dallas?
Oh,
Or I guess we're in the new year. How was last year's
yeah,
crop
let's
for
hope
you?
this year's better. Yeah. Uh, we started off fairly dry going in the spring, but we got timely rains all through spring seeding and going into June. Not big rains, but we had 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 2/10, and the crop come up 100%. Perfect. And was growing like gangbusters. But we never had no deep subsoil moisture. So I think we're between 4 to 6 inches last year in the growing season. That's not a lot of rain without subsoil moisture. And then when that heat in July came, I mean, it was 40 above during the days, and at night it hit the high 20s, if not the low 30s. And our crop just shriveled up and basically died. So we had a stand for a 40 bushel durum crop that went 18 or 19 on my average. Winter wheat maybe touched high 20s. That should be a crop that should be phenomenal, but that heat got it so bad. Yellow peas were a bright spot, but I had them seeded. April 22nd we started seeding them, and averaged mid to low 30s, maybe even mid 30s for sure on my yellow peas. So I was really happy with them. But they're such a short season crop. Like they're a 90-day crop, and we were taking them off after like 83 days in the ground, and they were coming off. So they're a short season crop. They did good. They would have been a monster crop. It was a stand for 70, and we got 35. But happy enough with that. 35. I'm not going backwards. Lentils, I had one field do 11 and one field do 20. So not the world's greatest average. I tried some intercrop stuff. That really almost goes into the epic fail category. It just, that yellow mustard combined with large green lentils just decimated the crop. The mustard was so good at rooting, and it was only at 1.3 pounds to the acre. Just that lentils didn't stand a chance. So I think that we haven't cleaned that up yet. I think that's a total combined gross crop of 9 bushels to the acre in the two of them. So that goes into the fail. But it should have worked. And it makes, if anybody grows lentils, which I do lots of, sometimes a large green lentil can be 24 inches tall, laid over to 3 inches. They're hard to harvest, but in the intercrop, they stand so good. So I haven't ruled that out as a crop I want to do more, but when you take a smacking like we did, it's tough. So, and then the worst thing is a poor crop, and now we're into pretty terrible prices. So she's a tough one around my place, but at least Tyler had a crop.
We had a very fair crop. We were very happy with our crop. Seeding for us started at a normal time, right around that
last week in April.
So on our farm, all we grow for crops is we grow malt barley, wheat, canola, and a tiny little bit of oats, but that's just for cow feeds. There's not a lot that goes into the oats. starting in, we always start off with our barley. That went in a timely manner. Had no rains. There was great sub moisture. We had minimal snow. It was actually last winter was a fairly balmy winter for us, which made it really nice for calving. But getting back to the seeding, and then we got into our wheat, got that in a timely manner. I think we had one shutdown because of a rain, and then we always like to wait a few weeks after we finish our wheat before we start into our canola, just because we're in a high frost area. It does get cold sometimes. So we waited for that. We got about half our canola crop in, and then we got rained out. I think, if I remember right, we got about 2 inches, and that shut us down for probably about 4 days. And then we nicely got rolling again and got everything else in. And then we had a bunch of timely rains up until about July there, like you were saying, Dallas. Then the heat came, and we got them 40 above days. And fortunately for us, our canola was ahead of that and had already finished flowering before all that heat came in. So it did hurt our canola a little bit, the heat, but not like a lot of some guys. It did, like, what is it, 2 bushels a day when it's 40 above? Is that?
That's the number I heard.
Yeah. So.
And the big thing is, I think subsoil. Well, we're beeping again, but subsoil moisture. I noticed when we were combining there, any little dip in the field, or maybe a little bit of snow had ran or melted and ran and made a little slough, little puddle. It just stood straight up above the rest of that crop, and the heads were full and leaned over, and for 200 feet or 100 feet, the old yield monitor would jump right up. And the yield monitor would jump up, the throwover monitor would go down because it was bigger, fuller, plumper grain. It thrashed better, everything worked better. And then you'd pull out of that, and you're back into the teens and garbage. Thin, skinny, lightweight. In my case, durum.
Mm-hmm.
Yuck. And now it's a pain marketing that stuff, and the durum market's in tough shape. I mean, 3 years ago, $22 durum was ridiculously too valuable. Beyond, that was worth too much. The world market couldn't handle that much, that price of crop. It was fun to sell, but it wasn't good for the world.
Just like ours.
Drop down to $14, $15 a bushel. With today's input costs, machinery costs, that's about right. And now we went so far the other way to, sub $9 durum. I mean, sub $9 durum even if I rounded it up, a 20 bushel crop, that's $180 at the best case scenario. And, well, I haven't done all the math, but 180 doesn't cover the bills, never less the payments or the rent. So a little bit of crop insurance money will keep us afloat for this year, and then we'll figure it out for next year. But yeah, it's...
Well, that's one saying we always got, that us farmers have come accustomed to. There's always next year.
Oh, yeah. And right now we had between nothing to 2 inches of rain after harvest. We have a little bit of subsoil on the stuff that had 2 inches, but we stayed another 50 days after that rain before we had any freeze up. That little bit of subsoil moisture might be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have enough snow out here to ride my sleds around the yard. It's just, there's not enough. If you went 20 miles north up towards La Flèche, Gravelbourg, there's more snow. Guys can sled up there. But down here, we can't yet. And they keep forecasting, but they can't forecast the weather. They can forecast the wind. They can't do the weather. Well, a few days ago, they were calling for 10, 15 centimeters of snow. I'm like, yeah, that'll get me out riding. My daughter and I can go for a ride. Well, I don't know if we got an inch. I mean, we got 3 centimeters. We got nothing. Not enough to make, any good sledding, and not going to be enough to make a runoff. And, I don't have many cows. My dad and my daughter are the ones that play with the cows a little bit. I think we're up to 11 head. Years ago, we did have 160 head, so I know my way around a cow. And I didn't mind them, but they're too much work when we're trying to seed. So we're back up to 11 head, and my dad, he's got a good sense of humor. He calls them his edibles. So we usually end up eating 1 or 2 of them. With kids and stuff, and Tyler, you got kids too.
Yep.
My daughter, she's involved out with the cows. And, when you're young like that, sometimes farm machinery doesn't excite kids. But, them cows excite her. and keep her involved in agriculture. And that's the next thing for me is I have one daughter. We were blessed with just only having the one girl, and to get them involved in agriculture and keeping this farm alive and going forward is a major part. Whether she ever wants to farm or go into cattle or just be a smart businesswoman and manage this operation, you know, from a a business perspective as a landowner and renting it out to the proper and correct renters, she has to have that knowledge that I have to give her, that my dad has to give her, you know, to learn how to manage this, because this is, the days of this being a mom and pop's operation of having 1,200 acres and 55 head of cows are come and gone. I mean, it's a 10,000 plus acre operation with multiple men and machinery and investments that are in the millions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's unfortunate to see it go that way because in a way we are losing a lot of our good neighbors. And in some cases our farming practices are getting better, but I also believe with some of these big corporations that are coming in, some of them aren't doing as good of a job either.
No, and that's it's a touchy subject, but dealing with some of the uh, non-area ownership, I don't know if that's right. The investment ownership is something I've had a hard time dealing with, and I know guys that farm that land, and I got zero problems with them renting the land. I just don't agree with non-farming entities being able to own massive amounts of farmland as an investment. You know, I have a hard time understanding that and how that years ago that wasn't even legal, but our government's made it legal, and I've never liked it as a community person. I know when that land gets sold to an investment group and gets rented out, that rent money that you know uh, tenant is paying that landlord is gone.
It's
It's
not it's
going.
not staying in your community.
Nope, it's going to Calgary. It's going to, you know, in some cases, it's going to other countries. you know,
As
it,
unfortunate it is, but that's the world we live in, and I don't think there's really anything we can do about it. It's just what agriculture is coming to, unfortunately. I think we might see a shift in that where some of that goes back to local owners if we see interest rates jump up a whole bunch and land prices start to drop. But for a young guy like me to buy a section of land just getting started out and with a young family, it's hard to be able to come up with that down payment and make the payments and support my family at the same time. And obviously, anybody in agriculture would have that struggle, but it's a little bigger piece of the pie for me to take a bite of, being that I'm at the beginning of my career. And
yeah,
I,
and I'd say in my career, I'm in the middle of my career. I mean, I'm only 48, so I still got another 15 good years, hopefully, in front of me of farming and enjoying myself. But what I mean, you don't remember that, or you do remember it, but it wasn't that many years ago. Less than 20 years ago, our land was 50, 60, 70,000 a quarter for fairly decent land. And I don't really think the land value has changed any, unless you're looking at a map. But now that same land sells for 200, 220. You go north of here 20 miles, 400, 600,000 a quarter. So it's just,
well, we don't even want to start talking about what it goes for in that Portage country over by Winnipeg.
well, million
Million,
more.
million
Yeah.
or more, yeah. So I don't know how those guys are doing it out there, but there's got to be something in the water there that we don't know about over here.
and and you got to be able to make a living and support it. I mean, if you're going to pay for the machinery and the land and the men and the chemical and the inputs, obviously some of them guys I really think are doing it for absolutely nothing. They're probably actually doing it at a loss. It takes that paid for land in my situation to help subsidize some of the newer land that we bought that has a pretty hefty payment. When you break it down to dollars per acre, it's twice what rent is. So it's taken that, say you have bought a section, but you have a neighboring section that you have paid for. Well, it's going to take 2 sections to make the payment on 1 section. And that's the only way I can pencil it out is, okay, if my payment's going to be $150 an acre, I'm just making these numbers up, folks. But if my payment's going to be $150 an acre and land rent is 75, I'm going to need almost as much paid for land to help offset the non-paid for land, and then compare that to my rented land, because it's. But in the fun years when a guy was making money and shipping grain out, and every time a Super B of Durham left the yard, there was going to be a $36,000 check show up in a few days. Those were pretty fun.
Those are fun days when those checks come in, but when that grain goes out at the end of the year, in my case, there's a lot of checks that got to go out, and that $36,000, it doesn't go very far.
No. It doesn't go far enough at all. It's a tough game, and they say farmers are gamblers, and we are the biggest gamblers of all. When you can go out there and stick $1 million plus, 2 million, whatever it is, into the ground, just in inputs plus everything else you've invested, just to hope to break even and make a few bucks at the end of the day. In the good years, we were making money. We were upgrading, we were building buildings, we were buying machinery, and now we're at the stage where, the downtrend has come on, and so now it's just, the buy-ins really narrowed up to the essentials and very little upgrading. Now it's just maintenance. Let's just keep what we have and not go backwards. Is my goal right now.
And that's the different demographic I'm in. Like you were saying earlier, I'm in some good years right now. We're getting adequate rains and whatnot. And we're still, fortunately, on my farm, we're able to progress forward still. We're buying newer machinery. This year last year now, keep talking like we're in 2024, but we're actually in 2025 now. In 2024, we put up a new workshop for ourselves, and that's not cheap. There's a lot of unexpected costs with that, but we're still moving forward, and it is a lot of my dad and my uncle. They're basically the sole owners of the farm. They got the most invested, obviously, and they're kind of just setting that up to help get the next generation going here, and it is part of it. And the unfortunate thing is, there's not a lot of young people interested in ag anymore. Like I don't even know how to either you grew up in ag or you didn't, and I don't know. It's just there doesn't seem to be a lot of young people interested in it anymore. Like when my dad grew up, he had half a dozen neighbors that were his age that were interested in ag, but they never continued on with it. And a lot of it, we own a lot of that ground now just because there wasn't another generation to take it over. And for somebody just to start out in ag from scratch, like have no relatives that own land that can give them a break, I would say it's impossible.
Yeah, next to impossible. I mean, what do they say? To make a small fortune farming, you have to start with a large fortune. Because, I mean, it wouldn't be possible. And I mean, it'd be hard to buy, call it 10 acres, and try to somehow capitalize the max amount of dollars you can off of 10 acres and grow that to the size that my dad has grown this operation to. Because, I'm more the face of the farm, but my dad has been the driving force the entire time behind this operation. So he's invested everything. Like Dad says, I don't got any savings. I've invested my entire life into dirt and iron, and that's it.
That's the exact same thing with my dad and my uncle. My uncle, he's in his late 60s. My dad's in his mid 60s, and they've put everything they have in it. And just recently, they're kind of starting to wind things down as a younger generation's taking over. And they're actually starting to buy themselves things. Like they were never driving new pickups. They always made sure the wife had a new car for running the kids around, but themselves, they were always driving used pickups, older pickups. But now they're buying themselves new half tons every couple of years. They've started collecting antique tractors. Here a few years ago, my dad just bought himself a 2008 Corvette. Like they're finally starting to enjoy what they work so hard for, fortunately.
And I think that's some of the scary parts that some younger generations don't want to get into. You know, the stress of trying to keep a farm alive and, you know,
Well,
not having a holiday, sort
it's
of thing.
that sacrifice, right? Like, and it's tough for me because I got friends who aren't in ag and they work regular jobs and whatnot, and they have toys, they
Yep.
have campers, they have boats, they go on sled trips, they go on fishing trips up north every summer. Well, I don't do that. The only toy I got, I have it in one of my TikTok videos, is that side by side. Well, to me, that's not a toy. I bought that as a tool for me to use around the farm, and that's what I use it for every day. And I maybe go on one holiday, and I go with my in-laws to a rented house in Arizona for about 5 days, and then
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
back home on the farm.
Yeah. And that's one thing with the non-farm people. Like, you know, they've invested in their education and their career and their pension plans and stuff like that, and that's good for them, great for them, because they can enjoy that stuff as you're going along with time. They're going to have their regular scheduled 3 weeks of holidays or whatever it's going to be, you know, or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and they're going to have their holiday time and their trips and their stuff. Where I'm hopefully going to be like your dad. When I get into my 60s, then I will have the Corvette will show up and maybe the cabin at the lake. But up until then, it's just a sacrifice that I've chose to make. The only thing I've taken up in the last half a dozen years is a little bit of snowmobiling in the wintertime because there is zero time for a holiday in the summer at my place. You know, we go up to take the camper to the lake, and so my daughter can do swimming lessons and try to spend a few days up there with them. But the problem is the lake's not far enough away from the farm, so I end up making my way back to the farm almost every day, and always got something to do.
Yep.
But the wintertime, I got a one snowmobile trip planned. We're going up to the Hudson Bay area for a week, and but that's a winter thing. I mean, that's I can get off the farm in the wintertime. There's a bit of free time there.
Yeah,
But
you're fortunate enough you only have 11 head of cattle.
well, that's yeah. But then it comes spring, she's pedal to the metal. She's seeding and spraying, and then she's spraying, and then she's more spraying, and then you park the sprayer, and then you're gonna start the combine, and you're gonna fire the sprayer back up. So we're gonna be nonstop when we start in the middle of April. And middle of April, she's pedal down with exception to just a half a dozen days in July, all the way to the end of harvest. And then you get a bit of a break then, but even then the fall work is massive. You know, when there's always a rock pile or a fence line or something you want to pick up and clean up, or you
Yep.
know.
Well, there's always something. In our case, there's, like you said, there's always a rock pile or a fence line. Well, we have about 350 head of cattle. Well, there's always a fence line somewhere that needs to be replaced. Well, when you go in to do that fence line, well, we better take the cat over and push it off because trees are just a nuisance in a fence line. Well, we better like smooth out the ground, make it all gradual so it's not all dips and dives because it's easier to put the fence in, and then the fence always keeps nicer.
Yeah,
So there's in some way you're growing some different crops that require a little more babysitting than me,
yeah,
but we have the cattle, so we go seeding. We have a little lull between seeding and haying, but there is spraying to do in there. But we're not farming quite as many acres as you are. And then there's haying, and normally right in the middle of haying, there's also spraying that needs to be done. Then you get haying done, we kind of get everything cleaned up, put away, and then it's time to get ready for harvest. Pull combines out, look at grain augers, and get all that stuff ready to go. And then maybe have a week or two in there where it's a little lax, but we kind of like to do our own projects. Like when we build grain bins, we tend to always build hopper bins.
oh yeah,
So
yeah,
we own our own bin cranes. So in that time after haying, we'll build bins or whatnot. Or sometimes we need to build a new cattle shed because nothing stays new forever.
yeah.
And then harvest comes on, and then like you said, there's the fall work. There's rock piles to bury, yada yada yada. It
Did you hear the jealousy in my voice there when you didn't mention you had no pulses? I was like, he's not shaving the ground. That's with us. We're a third pulses between large green lentils and yellow field peas, and in the past, I'm really successful at buying like 80 cent a pound chickpeas, and then spending a lot of money on seed and growing them and selling them for 30 cents a pound. I've done that a few times, and so no chickpeas. But all of a sudden they get to 80 cents a pound again. I might buy some more and then run the price back down. But yeah, the pulses are, but out here, lentils have been a major.
Your
They paid a lot of bills.
the pulses are more prevalent in your area than they are mine. I'd have to believe. Like, we're more cereals and oilseed in my area.
And the odd a soybean out there, there's none out here.
Yes, there is some soybeans, but there's not a lot of it. Like, there is a lot, but for there's peas and soybeans. That's really all there is for pulses in my area. I don't know of anybody that grows lentils. Like, lentils is a pulse, is it not?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know pulses, right? Because we don't grow them on our farm. So,
Oh yeah.
like, all I know is barley, wheat, canola, and oats. That's all we've ever grown on our farm. We grew rye one time, but I was too young to even know the difference between a John Deere and a Case.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You try to explain to somebody what a pulse is, especially like a lentil or like a red lentil. Okay, I'm gonna grow a crop that's 8 to 9 inches tall, and I'm gonna seed it on rough, rocky terrain, and I'm gonna harvest that about 3/4 of an inch off the ground, and I'm gonna try not to destroy a multiple hundreds of thousands of dollar combine doing this operation. And they look at you like you had two heads. Why wouldn't you just grow barley and not sacrifice your machinery? But when the lentils and peas are worth good money, and if you can roll them and get them done right and take your time, you can make some good money at it and not destroy everything.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, when they get a little rain on them and they lean over, well, then the adventure begins.
And see, that's something similar to malt barley. Like, you don't want to get many. Like, once the barley has been swathed or it's in head and it's ripened, you don't want to get any rain on it because it can lose its color. And if it sprouts, then it's no good for malt barley. Then it becomes feed, and
Yep.
feed is so up and down. You could make a lot of money on feed, or you could lose a lot of money on feed.
Yeah. Yeah, Dad used to grow some malt barley. Oh, into the early 2000s, we grew malt, and and sometimes that was the wheat board days and stuff. And malt, we'd have it off fairly early, and it had good movement. But all of a sudden, we were raising up, fertilizer rates, and got into some dry years. Well, the malt barley wasn't malt; it was feed. It was too light and too burned up,
Mm-hmm.
and it was selling for half the price of what durum was. And we were almost getting more yield in the durum, so we just basically dropped barley right out of our operation years ago, and really haven't missed it.
For
And
anybody that doesn't know, barley is a very itchy crop.
yeah,
It is.
just something about that dust bites into every pore and just scratches inside every pore in your body.
You get it in your nose and it just burns.
Yeah. Another itchy one is canary seed, which I've never played with. I've seen it lots, but I've never played with canary seed. Canary seed looks like a cereal crop. I think it's an oil seed, but yeah, I've never. But I guess that's one of the most itchiest crops on the planet. So,
Well, lentils are a little itchy on the itchy side, are they not?
well, the dust would be, but the lentils themselves, they're just like a little UFO saucer. They're just kind of round and flat at the same time. Little oval shape, just a little dome shape. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but
They're very dirty to harvest, are they not?
Well, yeah, because you're on the ground, so any dust that's blowing by or in the field, or if they've had a wet year, they can get quite a bit of mold on them and stuff, and then you end up with a moldy, yeah. The stems are moldy and the dust will be moldy, and then you'll be combining in a cloud. So you got to have just the right conditions for everything.
Mm-hmm. Although that, when you say you're just like in a cloud, that reminds me, because on our farm we swath every acre, including the canola. We don't do any straight cutting. It's just some older farming practices that my dad and uncle are stuck in, and it works for us. So there's no use in complaining about it till I'm blue in the face. But on canola, when it's in a swath and it gets rained on, it does. They say it doesn't, but I believe it does. It loses a little bit of bushel weight, and it just turns everything black.
Yeah.
Like you'll be combining along and you won't even be able to see the header in front of you.
Yeah, it just starts to break down. Like it just, the material, the stock or whatever. I think it's starting to break down. We'd canola swathed a few times over the years, and on the good wetter years, we grew, for my area, 40, 50 bushel canola, quite a few years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, those are the years in the early 2000s when canola was 550 a bushel. So, you know, grew a decent enough crop and then didn't have a price.
Well, we don't even
And
have a price right now.
no, but there, some of it was touching. Was it 1350? They're saying it last Friday there a few places. So, but no, canola should basically, even in this part of the dry country, it needs to be $20.
Yeah.
The inputs in the canola, the fertilizer usage, it needs to be $20.
Or are we not $900 for a 50-pound bag now?
Oh yeah, yep. And that's and that's another thing is we'll get into later on is equipment. I run Vatterstads, so I can with the independent shanks, I can cut my seed right back, so I can stretch that $900 bag instead of doing 10 acres. I might be able to stretch that to 10 or 12. But then you get guys, in more your area, but a few around here, more all the time, getting older planters with the canola discs, and they're down in the 2 pound range and being able to grow a crop. So you have to stretch that bag as far as you can.
So with the air drills versus the planter there, it was one thing we looked into it here, but we were told we have a little bit too much stone for it. But they were saying with the air drill, you have 80% seed crack with canola. And they claim that's why guys that do it with planters can stretch that out so far. Whether that's true or not, I've never actually got to real do a test on it. Here a few years ago, we were going to demo a Vatterstat planter, and I think that was in 2020, and that was a very wet spring for us, and everything was late. So it never ended up coming to be, and then we never heard anything more about it, and life goes on. But
Yeah.
someday I would like to try a canola planter and test it against my air drill and see, because when you look at the cost of that, for what I'm going to save in seed over a few years, I could almost pay for that planter.
Oh yes. Pay for the planter and also not have to put that wear and tear on your air drill.
Well,
But I don't know how the planter would do for fertilizer, and again, that's out of my realm of talking completely. But yeah, but if you can cut your seed rate in half and have, your 3 to 6 plant stand per foot or whatever the number you're targeting, that's where the planter with that disc is just it rolls out. The little meter wheel grabs it, it rolls out, goes down the tube into the ground. They're next to exactly spaced if they're done right.
mm-hmm. Well, not only that, you can use, instead of, for easy figures, you can use a 300 horsepower four-wheel drive tractor or front wheel assist versus what most guys are pulling air drills with now, 500 horsepower plus four-wheel drive tractor. So not only have you saved that, but you got a cheaper tractor you're running, less fuel.
Less fuel.
And
if you
sorry,
had the manpower to split up your operation to do that, you could also get your seeding in more timely. And in my part of the world, pretty well, you want to be aimed to be done by the middle of May. For the way the climate and then the weather patterns have come, it seems like you got to get it in to beat that heat. Because that's what Dad and I were talking about the other day. He said, I remember it in the 80s. He said, you'd hit 30 for a couple of days and go, whew, that's hot. And now we're hitting 40 for multiple days, and that's way too hot. He said, now we get down to a day it's 30, so it's not that bad. So that's the time factor is the big thing, is getting it in, getting it done. That's why we went to the second air drill a couple years ago. The farm was growing in size, and the first drill was getting to be pushing. We were pushing over 10,000 acres through one drill. It really had to perform. And then one breakdown with a tractor, an idler wheel, or anything, and your whole operation stops. But at least with two of them, one can go down for a day or whatever, and the other one stays cooking along 300-400 acres a day. And then when they're both going, we've never done it. I've always wanted to try to do that 1,000 acres in a day. We've never done it. We never have. But in theory, I can do it. We just
Mm-hmm.
never done it. But someday. But yeah, we run. Was it a 2021 80-foot Vaterstad with a 980 tank, and then the new one is a 2024 60-foot Vaterstad with a 680 tow between tank. I have some land that's a little harder logistic wise to get to. So there's down a trail and I'm across a valley, and that narrow fold 60 foot and that tow between is a smaller unit. It's not as long, nor nearly as wide, or nearly as heavy. So when it comes to crossing the river or getting down that dirt trail to farm some out of the way fields, that's where that little drill shines. And then this part of the world has a lot of water runs. So it doesn't matter what size a drill is double seating a water run, whether it's an 80 foot or a 60 foot, it's still double seating a water run. So, we pull into a field with the two drills, and the big one starts going back and forth, and the little one basically just goes hunting pecks water runs for a little while, and then the big drill can stay running steady. And the little drill has done its job doing water runs. So whether it's an 80 or a 60, and with the Vaterstads, we're only using 20 to 30 feet of the drill anyways, the way the sectional control works.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting it done.
Well, you might as well have that smaller drill doing your overlap versus the big one, right?
Yeah.
So do you normally run both drills in the same field at the same time, or do you often have them split up?
No, we run them together. With the liquid systems we have, I just don't have the trucking power or the manpower to have them split up. If I had, I'd need almost twice as many trucks to haul, seed and fertilizer and liquid fertilizer to them, and then same time I'd be trying to get that spraying ahead of two different outfits, and usually they'd be doing different crops. It just logistically running them together isn't the most efficient, but I think it's more efficient than having them apart.
Yeah, I would have to think so. We do the same thing. Our drills, they run in the same field. If not, they're across the road from one another. And generally, when they're split up, one's just finishing up and the other guy's starting the next field.
Yeah,
So,
we're the same way that way. One might be a few hours ahead of the other one, but a lot of the times when we're moving them, and we have some big moves, nice to get them just paired up together, and you have one wide load going down the road, so you only need one pilot truck, and get people off the road, let the drills go cruising by, and it's funny how I watch videos there, and you see people that they run one truck, that's their business, that's their operation, and thinking to myself, I'm almost jealous you only had to maintain one outfit. Because around our place, it's 2 sprayers, 2 drills, 2 tractors, well, a dozen tractors, half a dozen semis. The maintenance is off the charts keeping that stuff running.
Oh, absolutely. It's insane what it costs to keep this equipment running nowadays. And it's getting to the point where we can't work on some of it. Because of the software side of things. Like, a lot of the time, it's not something mechanical. It's some stupid little depth sensor or something.
Yep. Depth sensor or a knock sensor or, a camshaft sensor. Most likely the motor's running fine, but if the camshaft sensor says it's in the wrong position, it's not going to start, And it just makes a pain in the ass when you can't work on that stuff. But that whole right to repair thing, and that's a 2-hour podcast right there. And another thing is almost the planned obsolescence, what I call that, in some of this machinery and technology. Mm-hmm. It's after 10 years, you go to the dealership, and it's like, yeah, we can't get that part anymore. It's like, but it's not that old. In my mind, a 10-year-old combine or 10-year-old tractor is still pretty new. But, they want us, and pickups are, yeah, they want us to be every few years to be trading out of them. And
every 5 years. Once it's paid for, every 5 years. Oh, well, you got it paid for. You might as well start making payments again.
But then all of a sudden, you have an old tractor. Like I always say, it's the world's most famous 9280, Case IH 9280.
It's your profile picture on TikTok.
Yep. We've had that since the 2000 or 99, Dad bought that tractor. But then all of a sudden people look at that tractor like, I've had people try to buy that tractor. Like, you want to sell that tractor? No, but it's fixable. It's got a mechanical big cam Cummins. It's, it does have a 12-speed power shift Fujitec transmission, but basically what I was told, that thing is grenade proof. I mean, I think they put the same transmission in some of the big buds and stuff, so it's tough as nails. It's never touched wood. It's never given me a minute of problem in the transmission wise, and it's just the downfall of them tractors is they're that one's at the top of its horsepower at 400 and some. It's topped out. It's weighted out as far as we can go. The hydraulics aren't there to run the new machinery like the new tractors are, and that's the biggest downfall is they don't got the hydraulics. Compared to what my T9 has.
Yeah. You could put an Adam Jet on it, but then again, you got to look at it. It's an old tractor. Like, where do I stop?
It's got an Adam Jet.
It's got an Adam Jet. Okay.
Yep. We put that on there in 2011 when we ran the first Seedmaster. We put the Adam Jet on there for the hydraulic fan.
Okay.
Because that's the reason I call it the world's most famous 9280, because it's most likely the only case 9280 series tractor to ever pull an 80-foot air drill and a 980 bushel tank. It didn't like it, but it did it, and it did it for about 1,200 acres. It's a prelude. We lost a motor and a tractor on like the day 2 of seeding a few years ago.
You have a video about that on your TikTok, actually.
I do.
They're going to have to go back and find that one for themselves.
Yeah, they find that one for themselves, and then in a scramble, because there's no way of getting a motor in that tractor during spring seeding, it took us, the motor change in that tractor took to the next spring pretty well before it was done. So in a scramble, of course, it was right during the peak of COVID, when tractors were made of unattainium, had to go find a 600 plus horsepower, high hydraulic tractor. And I had a couple of choices after a couple of days of looking. Either was brand spanking new or the one we bought. So that's how we got that T9 700. And so far, with the exception of some issues that we've been learning, that's a damn good tractor. They pull hard and it hooks up hard. It's a little bit rough in certain field conditions, and some spots it's smoother, and the next spot I find it rougher. So it's each to their own and their preferences. But I mean, lots of people make fun of that tractor on TikTok and stuff. And my choices was a brand new Versatile, which would have been a great tractor, but it was brand new Quad Track Versatile or Delta Track. That was, 600 and some grand. Mm-hmm. Or this used one, which was 300 and some grand. Well, it was almost half the price. And when you didn't plan on budgeting to buy a tractor on the day 3 of seeding, we took the cheaper tractor.
I would have done the same thing. Honestly, like that sucks. And we recently bought a new 4-wheel drive tractor, and we kept the old one back because we bought it in COVID times for that exact reason. If we popped a motor in one or had one burn up for whatever reason, because on our farm we need 2 drill tractors.
Yep.
None of the other tractors we have could really handle what we needed to do. We have one. It's a T9 435. It would do it, but it would be pushing it beyond its limit. It would just be too much for it with the toolbar, the air cart, and the liquid caddy behind it.
Yeah, because that's only 10-point-some liter motor in that one.
You know what? I'd have to look that up to be certain.
Yeah. We had a T9 390 a few years ago, which is a little smaller version of that one. And excellent grain cart tractor, except ours didn't have a PTO. And that was the only reason that we don't have that tractor anymore, is it didn't have a PTO, because that was a real good tractor. Yours got a PTO?
Yes, it does. Yeah, we use it on our grain cart. And we have 2 of them 34M Degelman manure spreaders. So it pulls one of them as well. So our smaller 4-wheel drives that we buy under that 450 horse, we always spec them with a PTO. Just for that reason, because we have 2 grain carts. We regularly only use one And it's just handy to have a PTO in them small four-wheel drives. If it wasn't such an expensive option to put in, I'd put it in every one. Because generally when we buy a four-wheel drive tractor, we always order a new one because on our big four-wheel drives, we run triples.
Yep.
A lot of people ask us, why do you run the triples? Like, why don't you get a quad track? Well, a quad track, new, just to go to that quad track option. Now I've heard lately it's over $100,000. Well, now I have three. Before we had two big 500 plus horsepower tractors. Well, at $100,000 a piece, that's $200,000. Well, I
Yep.
always like to try and keep a fairly new tour tractor around. Well, $200,000, that goes a long ways towards that 180 horsepower tour tractor.
Yeah.
So,
and you don't run a lot of big hills, do you?
in our area, we have some. There's nothing on my farm compared to what you have.
Yeah.
It's just, we had triples kind of just as tracks were coming in, and we like them. Like, you go to them big duals, and you can get that road loading. You don't seem to get that with the triples, and we actually find we get just as much traction with the triples as you would with them big metric duals.
Yep.
We are going to try a quad track someday. I think it'd be really nice to have on the grain cart just for the ride and keeping it narrow.
Yep.
Because we have that Parker grain cart. It's, what is it? It's a 1,500 bushel grain cart, if I remember right.
Yeah, 16 something or other.
Yeah,
is the name.
16 or something. So
Yep.
that T9 435, it handles it fine. When you got an experienced guy in the seat that knows what weight is and knows how to run a grain cart and kind of knows the lay of the land here.
Yeah.
To put a rookie in that's never ran anything like that, it's not the right tractor. There wouldn't be brakes left in it. Like my brother, he generally runs the grain cart, and he'll start out in low gear on the top of some of our hills, and by the time he reaches the bottom, he's in about 14th or 15th gear, just riding it out. So,
yep. Well, there's a lot of weight back there. It's like, if anybody's watched my videos, you'll see that I run them big Mandanko rollers behind my 9280, that triple tractor there. Well, when the roller outweighs the tractor by 20, 30,000 pounds, you better have somebody that knows what they're doing sitting in that seat, because to go down some of these hills, and the Mandanko guys were out here, and they couldn't believe it, that the hills. And I grabbed the old phone and actually downloaded the app right when they're there. Like, how steep is this? I don't know. So I put the app on my phone, 21 degrees. And I said, this isn't our steepest hill, but it's just where we were.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of as soon as you get past that 20-degree mark, you spray down it, you seed down it, and you combine up it.
Yeah.
This is how that works. And you have to roll down it, but you get to the top of the hill, and we found out, get to the top of the hill, you come right down to first gear at a dead idle, and you keep it at that idle, all the way to the bottom at a mile an hour, less than a mile an hour. Or else, as soon as you get going any faster than that, then that land roller, it's in control. It's gonna shove you around.
It's showing that tractor who's boss.
Yeah, but if you stay at an idle, you're in control.
Yeah. Well, it's just like driving a semi in the mountains. You don't want to go up the hill any faster than you want to go down it. You start out in low gear at the top.
Yep. That's another conversation. Trucks. Oh boy.
Oh boy. We got a lot to talk about here, folks.
I got a buddy of mine, a YouTube guy out of state, Tony Fast. He always says trucks are dumb because they are so freaking expensive. If you have a lot of semis around the place and you have an income tax problem, take a look at your semi. I guarantee there's something needs to be fixed.
Yep.
They're broke down. You just don't want to know what it is yet. But there's going to be a tire, an airbag, a brake, a line, a hose, injectors, a turbo, a rad. I could just.
When I went away to get my 1A, I took a week course before all this month-long thing came in. I got my 1A in 2014. And one of the instructors was an ex-DOT, and he told me, he said, whether it's a one-day-old truck or a 10-year-old truck, I can find something wrong with it. It rolls off that factory floor. I can find something wrong with it if I look hard enough.
Yep.
And the shop rates on trucks are just outrageous. But we should maybe leave this conversation for another
Oh yeah,
episode.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
at an hour here already, so
Oh yeah, we'll get close to an hour. Yep. So that's going to be our introduction to you folks. We're just a couple of farmers. We're both in Saskatchewan. We both work hard. We're both on multi-generation farms. We're both trying to do the best damn job that we can do with what we have. And our experiences, you know, are going to be what they are, and we're just going to talk about how we've done things. We're going to get a few guests on that have their own way of doing things, and we're going to talk to people. We're going to check out how they've done things, how they're doing things, because I'm not done learning. I'm going to keep learning till I'm no longer on the dirt, on the top side of the dirt, I guess, because there's a lot to be learned, and agriculture, as in everything else, is constantly changing. The weather patterns have changed, agriculture has changed, machinery has changed, technology has changed. Even quick one little story here. My grandfather, God bless his soul, was retired from farming, and then at that time, Dad and I were renting the entire farm off of him. And he come out there and he rode in the world's most famous 9280, and I was seeding. We had the Seed Hawk back then, 48-foot Seed Hawk, and had the auto steer going on. That was the old Trimble with the can opener on the steering wheel, seeding away there. And he just was blown away. He's like, the stars are driving the tractor. Well, yeah, basically, the satellites are positioning it. And he understood, but he's like, just like saying, the stars are steering the tractor, because he was born in the 20s, grew up during the Depression, lived in the dirt bowls and through World War II and all that stuff. So he didn't go to war. He stayed behind, had a wife and young family at that time, but he put every extra dollar they had into war bonds, trying to keep the war effort going. So but he was blown away by the technology of how the stars are steering the tractor.
his technology was a fence post half-mile away.
Yeah, I remember as a kid learning how to drive a tractor, and you'd pick something out there, and I'm gonna aim towards that mark over there. Well, damn it, it was a car, and boy, was I crooked time I got it into the field.
So what are we going to call this podcast, Dallas? Did we talk about that? I think we kind of got off track there right at the beginning.
We got off track a little bit there, and we've kicked a couple of names around. But I think we'll go with it, the Bunny Hug Farmers. And if you're from Saskatchewan, you know what we're talking about. And if you're not, ask me, and I'll tell you why. But the Bunny Hug Farmers, it's unique to Saskatchewan, and it's unique to us, and it's only in Saskatchewan. So I think that's what we're going to be called. So I don't know, it'll be a BH on our decal or a logo or what we're going to do, but we're going to do something. But I think it's the Bunny Hug Farmers. It sounds goofy, and that's because I am.
It makes for a good chuckle.
Make for a good chuckle.
And that's what we're here for. We're here to stay positive on this. We're going to do our best to always stay positive and
stay informative and try to stay entertaining. And, I do TikTok for nothing. I do it for the fun of making a video. And the same with this. I don't plan on making any money off this. If I did make a buck or two off it, I'd just end up probably buying another snowmobile. But this is just for a hobby, just for fun. And if I offend anybody, I didn't mean to. But it is just going to be what it is sometimes. But we're just doing this just to have some fun, play around, support agriculture, show off the agriculture in Saskatchewan of what we can do here. And we're going to go from there.
Yep. This has been Dallas and Tyler. We're the Bunny Hug Farmers.
Thanks, Tyler. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.